Hi everyone, welcome to the Urban Book Circle show. I'm your host, Djuradj Vujcic, aka George, and my guest today is Mr. Huw Harris, a former soccer player who is now the franchise owner and head coach of the Brazilian soccer schools in British Columbia, and he'll be joining me right now. Hi, Mr. Harris. Thank you so much for being my guest
Good morning.
today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, my pleasure. You are someone I want to learn a lot from, so I hope you're looking forward to this as much as I am.
Very much. I never have a problem talking about the game, George. So it's just, if I go on too much, just shut me up.
Not at all. I guess I should start with your beginnings. You're originally from the UK. You've been living in Canada for a long while. And I want to learn how you came up with this idea, a Brazilian soccer school in British Columbia.
Well, I'd love to say I came up with the idea, but there are people much smarter than me in the game, and thankfully I found them. So give you a bit of background about myself. Yeah, I was a two-sport player. I was a rugby player and a soccer player. Loved both games. Through injury, my rugby career was curtailed. I continued to play soccer. Well, until only a few years ago, really, but never very competitive over in Canada. But I played, a decent level in Germany and in England. I got into coaching though when my kids came along. Like I think a lot of parents, a lot of ex-soccer players or fans, once you have children, your interest in the game gets you involved in the grassroots club where your kids go, and I was the same as many other people. I started, and I'm always been a person that if I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound, as we would say in England. So it's all in all the time with me. I'm a terrible poker player, so don't play cards with me, please, because you'll take all my money. But literally I was just 100% in from day one. And I did all my courses. I wanted to learn as much as I could to do the best job I could possibly do. I assumed the role out here as a technical director within the club I was working. And in that position, I become conscious of, what a poor job that was being done, not only at the club I was at, but sort of widely within the community, especially with the youngest children. They were coming into the game, and most families, or probably this will resonate with them. The kids were coming in, and most of the introduction to soccer was being done by volunteers that were ill-equipped, other than a bag of balls, some pennies, and some cones. If they were lucky, they might have been on a course that gave them some idea of how to structure the next hour of their life. But for a lot of those kids, it was pretty hopeless, and that just didn't seem right to me. When I got more involved and looked at the numbers, we were losing about 30 to 35% of those kids every year in the youngest age groups. And I just looked at that and felt like we were doing those families and those children a bit of a disservice. Our passion was not, rubbing off on these kids for different reasons. And I just wanted to find out, maybe there was a different way of doing things. And I went looking. I talked to lots of coaches. I read everything I could find online. I hunted around YouTube. I did, what a lot of people would do. And I was fortunate. I actually met a coach that started telling me about futsal, about Brazilian soccer schools in particular, and I reached out to them in the UK, and it just seemed to work, seemed to tick all the boxes I had at the time, George, that I thought it was a better way of doing things. I came back to the board. I presented the idea, and fortunately they were not as impressed as I was. Let's put it that way. They didn't really want to change the paradigm. They wanted to continue to use volunteers to, they seemed happy with the situation, which I found a bit shocking. But you know, respect to them. I resigned and decided to invest in a franchise. Brazilian Soccer Schools has been around for about 25 years. Like I said, it was put together by people much more intelligent, hardworking, and understanding of the game than I will ever claim to be. But I don't have to reinvent the wheel. What was put in place and what continues to evolve is so good and so powerful. I've seen it over the last 8 years here where we've been working, the impact on kids in terms of their confidence and their ability to play the game. It just allows them to have some success. And that's all you really need to do. It's kind of like lighting a firework. You know, you just touch that blue paper and stand back and the thing goes off, you know, and it's wonderful to see. I don't lose children the way we were losing them in the grassroots club. Those kids stick around, they have fun, they love it. Their smiles put smiles on my face. And yeah, so that's there we go. 5 minutes of introduction. So
What age groups do you coach?
I actually coach everything from 4 years old to 19, and I can do that in one day. You know, some days that's just the way it is. We have a partnership out here with a soccer club that's playing at high performance level. People call it an HPL. They play within the BCSPL out here, which is the Premier League. So I coach with them, doing Brazilian soccer schools with them. But my focus initially was always that 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old child coming into soccer for the first time. And we've just progressed there. We've got kids that have been with us. In fact, I still work with one girl who's in the full Rex program out here with the Whitecaps. We've got 6 girls that have come through Brazilian soccer schools or within that squad now, working with the Whitecaps. 3 of them have already been named to the U17 Canada team as well, which is gratifying, but that's not really all what we're about. You know, it's great that we can help some of those kids reach that level. But what we're more about is just making sure that we give kids the ability and the skills that they can have fun. And hopefully have those kids, you know, fall in love with the game and continue to play at whatever level into their, you know, adult years as well.
So I see behind you, obviously, a Brazilian flag, a Brazilian soccer school jersey. Looks like a Ronaldinho jersey and a Sao Paulo jersey. Is that correct?
You've got it right. Yeah. So actually the number 10 is Neymar jersey.
Okay.
One of my coaches is in Brazil right now. Brazilian Soccer School has a relationship with a number of clubs in Brazil, but mostly in Rio. So we've got a connection with Fluminense and Flamengo. The head of Brazilian Soccer Schools has moved himself from the UK to Brazil recently. We've got one of our boys from here, from Surrey, is down there and will be doing a week with Fluminense. This week actually starts today, so he's there for a week. So we have those pathways which are exciting, and we also have a number of clubs in England where we've got good relationships. Arsenal, can I say the word Chelsea still without, you know, creating another conversation about something? So Fulham, as well as Man City, and I've got a relationship with one of the youth coaches at Wolves as well. So
you mentioned Fulham. Fulham has a great player, Alexander Mitrovic. He's one of my favorites. And
okay.
I'm not. I don't know if I should ask this, but do you have a club that you support? Are you allowed to share this information?
Yeah, I'm not shy. You know, as anybody from the UK will recognize that my first name is Welsh. I'm actually from Wales, but I was lucky enough to sort of grow up, and when I emigrated, I was actually living in Liverpool, and I'd been a Liverpool supporter for some time before that. I was a season ticket holder, and even though she wouldn't appreciate it, it was harder to leave Liverpool Football Club than it was my girlfriend when I emigrated. I love you, Sally, really, wherever you are.
So, when I was doing my research for this interview, a word came up that I don't know if it's the exact same thing as futsal, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's futebol de salão. Would that be the same thing as futsal?
It sort of is. It's you're close. It's football de salão, which is the Portuguese. The French, it's very similar. It's football de salão, but I probably mispronounced that myself. In South America, so the history of futsal, futsal has only been around since, well, 30 years, and it was FIFA took a game that was prevalent in South America. It started in Uruguay, but it was really Brazil that took it on. When soccer was introduced there at the turn of the last century, they didn't have fields and playing grounds and that sort of thing. They had church halls and YMCAs. So most of the sports that were being brought from Europe were played in gymnasiums. And the leather bladdered ball that was being used at that time wasn't really much fun kicking around in a room. And the other sport that came across at about the same time that was very similar in a way was handball. And handball is pretty big in continental Europe. It's massive in Germany and Holland still, but it's played in a number of countries. And they use a ball that's about a size 2, and it's heavy, so it's a weighted ball. And originally I have no idea what it was stuffed with, but it's like a Nerf ball inside. So the ball was a bit smaller, and it is smaller with football de salão. It's the game that Brazil has gone back to. So the professional clubs started to use the size 4 futsal during the late 1990s, the noughties, 2000 and on, and in the last, I think, 5 to 10 years have reverted back to the ball that we use, because they see it as they see the futsal that most people use, that the FIFA size futsal is 30% bounce. The one we have is 10% bounce. It stays at a child's feet much more, so a kid will get more touches. It's easier to control and use, but it moves fast on a court. We play on sort of basketball size courts, and that lack of space and the speed is really what the gameplay teaches the kids to make quick decisions, and they have to have the skill set to be able to do it. But having said that, the ball also provides them with that quicker than a conventional soccer ball would.
And how do the kids take to this kind of soccer? Do even the kids like playing that kind of like joga bonito type of Brazilian soccer, or is it maybe too young?
No, they absolutely love it. Our sessions at the youngest age groups would probably look much like a regular session you'd see outdoors. The only difference is that there's almost no downtime with us because we've got professional staff. So there are water breaks, but the kids are constantly active. Everything we do, they have a ball at their feet. They obviously want to play the game, so we have small-sided games, just as they would if they were doing a practice outdoors. But the reality is that they are touching the ball up to 8 or 9, even 10 times as often as they would be outdoors. If you watch little kids play soccer at the youngest age groups, they kick the ball because their interest is how hard they can kick it, and then they run after it. With the balls that we have, they just travel with the ball. So almost immediately, a child with no experience is dribbling a ball, and we're not there saying inside, outside touches and all that. We just let them move with the ball. We want them to be successful, and so the youngest age groups, it's all about fun and engagement. We start to introduce different, parts of the foot and how you use them. But really, there's not a lot of correction. There's some skill development. We have fundamental skills that we try to introduce right away, and the kids pick up on those. But getting to the game itself, the kids love it. And it doesn't matter whether I've got, 17, 18-year-old boys coming in to the Richmond Oval to do a session with me, or they're 6 or 7-year-old and never really played organized soccer before. They love it because they're involved. There's constant involvement. The older boys don't even want to play on a full court anymore. They like to squeeze the court down to the point where, it's just, they have split seconds of time to be able to react because they're constantly playing under pressure. It's a different environment, but if you read about players like Cristiano Ronaldo, he says he loves futsal more than he loves playing, for Man United. But then again, who wouldn't? I'm sorry to all the Man United fans out there, but I'm a Liverpool man, so I've got to have a little dig. But same thing with Pelé. Pelé said everything that he learned was from playing futsal. Zico is the same. So a number of those Brazilian greats, like Zico especially, they've had a lot of input into Brazilian soccer schools. This wasn't done in a vacuum in England in somebody's bedroom. Brazilian soccer schools was put together on numerous trips to Brazil, where players like Carlos Alberto, Rivellino, Socrates, Juninho was a big one, and Zico all had input. Whether that was just by demonstrating different things and running classes that the founder Simon Clifford looked at, or whether it was just through conversations and constant question and answers. He built relationships with a number of those players over years, and they continued to support and advocate for what he was doing.
You mentioned in the early ages, it's all about having fun. When does it start to get serious? At around what age range?
For me, I don't think it should ever become serious. It's a sport. I know it does, and I know in Canada we have a culture, like a hockey culture, that everyone's aware of, like, how much pressure is put on these kids, and ranking. Oh my God, my son's ranked 9th in the province, and to me that's all sort of nonsense. It just applies pressure where these kids shouldn't have it. They should play for the joy, and the kids that want to go on and go to university and play at university, or even become professional soccer players, it's such a small percentage of the kids that we see. It's unrealistic and damaging to sort of put pressure on kids like that. I believe in what Ajax do, and a sort of an approach that's, I think, adopted by a lot of professional academies now. It's to try to remove that pressure, that expectation, the winning mentality, because it stifles creativity. If you get coaches that are trying to win games at U11, U12, it's just a face palm for me. It's I'd like to go over and slap them. Obviously I don't, because I believe in a safe sport environment as well, but so for me, sport should never get too serious. Kids will drive that. I honestly think the athlete drives that, because it has to be centered on the athlete. It's the individual that will determine, okay, what can I do to, can I recognize weaknesses in my game? Can I improve? And we certainly work with kids like that. But in terms of when it really gets serious for them, they drive it. And I guess, at the age, some of them 14, 15, 16, in terms of my belief, it shouldn't be until they're probably 15 or 16 that winning becomes important. And it's not suddenly important. It's not the be all and end all. I'd rather see that at the end of youth football, maybe the last 2 years, that, you know, the coaching is now trying to, you know, help them learn how to win, manage games and that sort of thing. But before that, it's just be, you know, as much fun for the kids as possible. I think overcoaching tends to stifle creativity, and that's something on the futsal side, it's all about creativity. So hope that answers that question.
It does, yeah. It's refreshing to hear, especially you mentioned hockey. Sometimes too much pressure is placed on the kids. They lose interest and they kind of actually like end up leaving the sport, maybe even resenting the sport. So that's refreshing to hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are some great videos out there through, you know, the national NCCP that talk about this. So that talk about this from a you know, a multi-sport perspective, not just focusing on one sport. And the tendency or the numbers are frightening about how many kids, when they hit high school age, are dropping out of sport and are gone completely. You know, there's something, you know, the numbers that I saw on a TED talk, I think, suggested as many as 70% of kids drop out of sport, organized sport, at around the age 13, 14. You know, and that to me is devastating. I mean, I played sport, you know, I was in the UK and sport was really more through school there. And then I was in Germany because my dad was relocated to Germany, and it was still school, but in Germany, it was local sports clubs. And the number of kids that were involved, you know, you know, the attitude was, you know, sport was for everyone, and it didn't matter what sport they played, whether they were swimmers or tennis players, or I don't think I knew I can't remember any kid that I grew up with that wasn't involved in sport, you know, whatever it was. I can't remember anyone that wasn't. And nowadays, you know, I mean, I've got 3 grown-up kids. They all played sport, except for my daughter. The 2 boys played sport all the way through high school and still play sport. I'm not sure what happened to my daughter, you know, but I wasn't the parent that sort of forced her to play, but I encouraged it. But that's a frightening start. And I think it does come because we are, you know, be it parents or be it sports organizations or just be it the culture in Canada, is too much about winning and too much about pressure at too early an age group. And, you know, as most coaches will tell you, George, when we do selections, which is often I think the point where these kids leave soccer because they, you know, if it's soccer we're talking about, because they suddenly think they're not good enough. You know, but as a coach that's involved with these evaluations, and, you know, I try never to look at size. You know, I might look at the parent size, right, when I'm looking at like the smallest kid on the you know, the soccer field. But what I'm looking at is heart, character, and technical skill, because size will come, right? You know, there's been those studies with hockey where if you weren't born January, February, March, you know, there was a huge tail off in terms of your opportunity to be on select teams and, you know, select teams and getting additional and, you know, coaching and the best ice time and all the rest of it. It just became, you know, exponentially harder to make it as a hockey player if you were born in October or November. I think we're guilty of the same thing in other sports, that we tend to stream the kids too early. You know, there's this sort of less encouragement. There's too much investment on the technical side or the professional coaching side for the high level play, and not enough at the lower levels. And, you know, the truth is that 12 or, you know, 11, 12, 13, these kids have not developed into their bodies yet. You know, in some cases, they're just going through puberty. They're just starting to, their bodies changing. You know, girls and boys, and we don't know until they're 15 or 16 what kind of athlete they're going to be. And yet 70% of them have already quit. You know, that's devastating to me. I mean, I just look at that and I think, you know, where could we be as a sporting nation if we can keep these kids playing for longer and give them resources and create environments where they want to play?
Do you think that Canada's on the right path? Obviously, a lot of progress has been made with youth academies and a lot of investing into facilities. Do you think that we have a bright future here?
Um, I'm not. I'm still a bit on the fence, to be honest. I think there's a number of things that are quite positive right now. Um, but to think the performance of the men's team and the likelihood that they're getting into the World Cup is a result of a lot of things going right. I don't think it is. I think it's the result of John Herdman. John Herdman, interestingly, was a Brazilian soccer schools coach and franchise owner in the UK before he accepted a role at Sunderland. I think it was Sunderland. I think what John's done is create an environment for the national team where players with Canadian roots or Canadian, here as immigrants are now wanting to play for Canada. So we're retaining some of the best players. And, in past years, that was not the case. We were losing players because they would rather play and try and play for their national team, back in Europe or, pretty much anywhere, really, right? Canada was kind of like a second choice for a lot. I think it's a first choice now. I think the success, obviously, of the women being an Olympic gold medalist and with the men's national team, I think that's going to create interest in the game. So I think as the Raptors' success, has got a lot of 4'2" kids playing basketball, hoping that they're going to grow up to be 7'6". I think the success of the national teams obviously will create interest in the game in Canada, which is what we need. Soccer is still the largest sport in Canada in terms of participation. And yeah, I think there are issues with governance in soccer in Canada. I don't think the CSA have enough power. But the changes that are coming down with national charters and improved courses for coaches, I do think we're moving in the right direction. I'm not sure that all the things that we need to really help are in place right now. I'd like to see that obviously in the news there's news of the Canadian Professional League starting up and growing. Well, it started, but hopefully now as we come out of the pandemic, we'll see how good that is. I'd like to see more of the MLS franchises. I can't understand why the Whitecaps don't have a professional women's team. When we've got West Coast professional women's team just south of the border. For the life of me, I don't understand why the Whitecaps haven't got a professional women's team in this city. But yeah, I'm optimistic, and I'd like to be a believer, George, that we are heading in the right direction. I think there's some indication that we are, but I don't know that we're not a soccer nation, and I don't know that we can ever expect Canada to be a soccer nation. Like the countries that we hail from. You're from Serbia, Serbia, Croatia, Greece, England, France, Germany. The first thing the kids do is they play soccer. That's the first thing. It's the easiest sport to play as well because all you need to do is drop something on the floor and start kicking it, and I think we're a long way away from that, if ever being that, because there's so many sports, and that's maybe not a bad thing. But I am optimistic right now that the success of the men's national team can be a catalyst to helping Canada grow a culture, even if it's one of multicultural in the sports environment that does sustain, and we can continue to be competitive and a top 50 nation in the world, not 120th or wherever it was we were.
Right. I just actually checked. Herdman was a development coach for Sunderland's youth academy. until 2001. And
Right.
funny enough, he and Bev Priestman from the women's national team are from the same place in England. So it's a fun fact.
Yeah, Bev Priestman was actually a student of his, so she did Brazilian soccer schools, and we have an international training week in the UK. The year that the pandemic hit, Bev Priestman was going to be our guest because she was Phil Neville's number 2 with the England setup back then, and so we were hoping that Bev was going to be able to meet us at our international training week. Obviously, she then got the Canadian national women's team job, and has gone on to great things. So interesting that both our national head coaches have got Brazilian soccer schools roots, though.
It is interesting. And you mentioned how countries in Europe are more like footballing nations, and it's because it's so easy to just pick up a ball and play. You don't need, thousands of dollars like hockey, for example. Do you think maybe here it's like a weather thing, where because outside it's so cold from November until like March? Do you think maybe that's why we're not kind of there yet?
I do. I think in part, George, I think that's right. But I actually think that our weather can actually be a key to our success in the future. If you look at this, England's success at youth levels in the last 5-6 years. One year they held every World Cup at every youth level, which is unheard of. It was even more than the German. There was that phase with the German team that won the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. Their youth level had been successful in the years prior to that. The sort of revolution in the UK, they actually talk about futsal, and Brazilian soccer schools haven't had a role in that. I think that the climate, the West Coast where I am, the kids can play in the rain and the cold, and they do. And that's maybe why some of the younger ones quit, because their parents don't like being out in the pouring rain in November. But for the vast majority of our Canadian children, you're absolutely right. For several months, playing outdoors is really not an option. They can play indoors. If they're playing indoors, I'd rather they weren't using the big yellow tennis balls that you used to see around, and that they were playing futsal, and even better, playing futebol de salão, the Brazilian form of it, because I do think it's it's a better tool for technical development. Just going back to the UK, I think that there was an article I saw where Simon Clifford, the original founder, had actually pointed out that the captains of England's boys team at U16, U17, U18 were all kids that had grown up doing futsal. Two of them were Brazilian soccer schools kids, and the third one, Charlie Patino, I think it is. He's the Arsenal starlet that's coming through right now. Had done something that was very Brazilian soccer schools oriented, with 2 Brazilian coaches in London. So there is a correlation right now with in the UK in terms of the technical development, with the players at the highest level all having a futsal background, having that technical background right through the youngest age groups. And it was interesting to see that even though those players, one was at Leeds United, one was at Chelsea, one was at Arsenal, that they all continue to do futsal training in addition to what they do at the clubs. So even, I'm like Archie Gray, who's the U16 captain, has grown up going to the Harrogate Futebol de Salão school, which was a Brazilian soccer school. And his involvement is now got, they are now doing Futebol de Salão training at Leeds United in the academy. And that's happened through a number of the Premiership clubs, that there is futsal components now into the training with the younger kids and throughout their academy. So, with their U16, U17 players as well.
I'm actually a sport management student at Humber College here in Toronto. And I recently was doing some certifications with Ontario Soccer and the national coaching, the NCCP. And I was talking to a former professional soccer player here, Rick Titus, and he told me, like, he warned me that coaching is very addictive. So once you start, you catch the bug and you can't stop, really. And I just wanted to ask, how rewarding is that? Like having, people look up to you and being able to teach people and give them your knowledge.
It's really fulfilling. I think you come into coaching with for me, I'm actually doing my children's license right now with CSA, and I've it's a year-long process. So I'm online tomorrow morning with 40 other coaches, a lot of them technical directors and various people, and I'm really impressed actually with the quality of people that are involved and the level of humility, especially. And I think the best coaches, come into it because of your love for the game, and you want to pass that along. So we're passionate about the beautiful game, and we might come into it. In my case, I was coaching, excuse me, a number of years ago, but I came in Canada. I started coaching again because of my kids. But as soon as I did that, I was, like I said, I was fully invested. I ended up giving up my other job, my other career, and now I make a living from this, doing something I love. So I feel very fortunate to be in that position. It is a privilege. It's also a responsibility. I think the privilege is not that you're just showing kids how to play a game, but you're entrusted by their parents to be a teacher to their children as well. And we know that sport, all sports people know playing a sport can be hugely beneficial for a child. It can shape them, in a way that prepares them for life like very little other things can. It teaches them teamwork. It teaches them the benefits of hard work and practice. It teaches them how to overcome adversity, and the benefits of competition, both winning and losing. Those are things that we do on a daily basis, as adults. If you think about it, we're constantly winning, we're constantly losing, and meeting challenges and overcoming adversity and celebrating little wins and so on. Well, sport prepares these kids for it, and it also allows them to build relationships and socially make friendships, and or even just learn to get along with people they don't get along with. Often your teammates are not always the people that you want to hang out with, but you find ways in which you can get along with people that you maybe don't see eye to eye with. So there's so many benefits, and and that's beyond the most obvious, which is of course health. A healthy child's going to be, a healthy person going forward. If they play sport all their life, hopefully they're going to be, healthy, or, healthier than the average person anyways. And that has societal benefits. But, as we're coming out of this pandemic, we're realizing that there's massive mental health benefits too. The support that coaches can give to the kids, and the players, their own peers, how much, support they can give each other. I think, we just want to get back to playing properly and get past this pandemic and move on. And as a coach, you see all that. You see the development of individuals, and you think, I had a little bit of a role, in that. And that's, for me, that's what I love. I do a lot of individual-based coaching. That's really what we're about. So it's not about teams. I don't put myself anymore. The last couple of years, I've not coached at team level by choice. I don't get along with referees too well. And I don't want to put myself in that position where I'm a bad influence, or, I got to the point I wasn't really enjoying, the team experience on a Saturday or a Sunday as much as I was working with groups of teams, preparing them, and seeing that, the individual grow as a player, grow as a person, and sort of celebrate their accomplishments quietly. But yeah, you've been warned, George. It's a dangerous thing to get involved with, because if you love the game, and you find your feet. I'll tell you, the best coaches that I've ever met, and I would like to think that, you know, I try to mimic them. We are reasonably humble, and we understand that we don't know very much. And I think if you can have that mindset as a coach and always be looking, you know, watching other coaches and try and pick up things, and, you know, it's a really fun occupation, surrounded by a lot of like-minded people that are also having a lot of fun. And we are, you know, that's our job, to make sure kids have fun. Ultimately, I think if we remember that as coaches, that we need to make sure that they're having fun, I think we'll be happier, and the kids will be too.
Well, thank you so much for our chat today. I think that's a good, uplifting way to end our chat. I enjoyed it a lot. I hope you did as well.
I did, George. Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well. I hope we can speak again sometime in the future.
I would like that very much. Okay, take care.
Thank you very much. You too.
Bye-bye.